Good evening and welcome to Territories Talk. I am your co-host, Shaina Smith Archer, tuning in from the Virgin Islands. With me tonight, I have Eden Hurlston from the Cayman Islands. And joining us in a few will be Chris Famous from the Bermuda. Seems to be having a few technical difficulties. But in the meantime, I will bring up my guest. Eden will pop right back in. All righty. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us.
Evening, everyone.
So Eden just had a technical glitch, literally. So while we are waiting for him to rejoin us, again, welcome to all our audiences. I want to give a big shout out first off to our media partners that are around the Caribbean region. We have ZJB Radio in Montserrat, Saba Radio. Again, congratulating them on their 50th anniversary. CBN Radio 90.9 FM here in the Virgin Islands. Channel 82 in Bermuda. Our newest partner is Radio Turks and Caicos, and we are also streaming live on CMR or Cayman Marl Road Facebook page, as well as our Territories Talk Facebook and YouTube channels. We want to welcome everyone in tonight from wherever you're tuning in. Be sure to drop in your comments. Let us know where you're at. So when Eden joins us again, we'll start the news. But in the meantime, I will ask the lovely ladies on our esteemed panel to begin to introduce themselves. I think I hear Eden knocking on the door again. 1 second. Mr. Hurlston, are you there?
Yep. With some gremlins, it looks like.
You joined just in time. So I just gave the welcome to everyone, and we can get into the news.
Okay.
So ready whenever you are.
The gremlins may be back.
You got to be kidding me. Oh boy. Let me give him 2 seconds, see if it clears up.
The perks of living on an island where your internet cable is underwater. Sometimes
Boy,
get little glitches.
We find it all throughout the Caribbean. All right, so we're gonna get started. So I'm gonna wait for his feed to clear up. So I'm going to start with to my right on the screen, Senator Donna Frett-Gregory. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Good evening, everyone. And first off, I want to thank you, Sheena, for inviting me to Territories Talk. This is a very exciting time, and I'm very happy to be here with these ladies. My name is Senator Donna Frett-Gregory. I am the president of the Legislature of the United States Virgin Islands. And I'm not sure what else Sheena wants me to say, but I will say that I've served in the executive branch of government for 30 plus years. And I have a family of 4 young professionals. And I am very excited about the work that I do here as a legislator and as a woman in leadership in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So I'm very happy to engage in this conversation with you ladies this evening.
Yes, thank you. That's a good start. Honorable Simmons, you're next up.
Good evening. Dawn Simmons. I am the chairperson of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. I'm actually the first female to be the chairperson elected as of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party. I also work in my communities. I'm the secretary of Somerset Cricket Club, and I also work on Sands Parish Council. So in the area that I work, I have my hands in many areas in my community. I have one son who is currently studying in the UK, and I have, of course, a great support system in my family here. And so I enjoy the work of politics, not being the politician, but the work of the politics in making sure that our members of parliament, our senators, and our membership are supported and have the access to all of our members of parliament. So I'm excited to be here tonight and happy to join the other ladies on this panel.
And thank you for accepting our invitation. Chris has spoken very highly of you on many occasions, so I am excited to have this conversation tonight. All right. Also joining us tonight is Miss Elise Donovan. Go ahead, Elise.
Good evening. I'm not sure why Shaina has me on this very esteemed panel. I am not a politician, nor am I an aspiring politician, so neither. I am simply a very patriotic Virgin Islander and, a global citizen. I currently serve work-wise as the CEO of the BVI Finance, which is the brand, reputational, and marketing agency of one of BVI's primary economic pillars, which is our financial services industry. And I am pleased, and I hope that I can humbly contribute to tonight's discussion.
Thank you, ma'am. She said she doesn't know why she's here. By the end of the show, everyone will know why she's here. Okay. And Emily this is your second debut, Emily.
Yes, thank you once again so much for having me, Shaina and Eden. And if Chris joins us later, many thanks to him. So as introduced earlier, my name is Emily DeCou. I'm a sustainability advocate from the Cayman Islands. But outside of my sustainability work, I've been in the financial services industry for a little over a decade. And I was actually recently appointed to my firm's environmental and social governance committee, which is making me quite, being with a lot of pride, thinking of the positive change that that could possibly bring for such a vital industry for not only the Cayman Islands, but globally. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to be a part of tonight's show and to get to learn more about the other lovely ladies on our panel, as well as to be inspired by them and to learn what they've, overcome as they've built their careers, and hopefully garner some tidbits for myself as I move through my own career. I do have political aspirations one day, but at the end of the day, in the words of my great brother Eden, the seat is not the prize, positive changes. So through community outreach, I hope to bring about positive change, however that looks.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily, for coming back again.
Thank you for having me.
Eden, are you back?
I think so, but it's moving it's a little laggy.
Okay.
But we'll see. We'll make the best of it.
A delay. Okay. Well, we've just finished with our introduction, so I guess I'll hand it over to you while you're here to get into the rest of the questions. And we'll get back to the news probably at the end.
Okay. All right, let us start with Senator Frett-Gregory, please. The first question up for discussion, why did you choose your current career? And what have been highlights and or some challenges along the way that you can tell us about?
Well, I am considered a politician right now, and I had an extensive career in local government here in the U.S. Virgin Islands for 30 plus years. And I actually decided to move away from the executive branch, the work of the executive branch, and move into politics. And I chose politics. I chose to become a leader here from the political perspective because in 2017, I made that decision as a result of the storms that occurred, the hurricanes rather, that occurred in 2017. I saw that, I recognized that there were things that were not moving in the right direction. And I know that I had something to offer to the people of the Virgin Islands. And that's what really made me decide to run for public office here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The challenges that I face, or that we face here in the U.S. Virgin Islands, are, basically around, and I'm sure that the challenges are very similar to those in the other Caribbean islands, are healthcare, housing, infrastructure, education. So as I have traversed the landscape of my political work, so I really don't like to think of it as a career, but it's really work that I do as a civil servant. So as I traverse the landscape of my civil servant work in the Virgin Islands, I've focused a lot in my first term. This is actually my second term serving in education. I've looked at education. I've done a lot of extensive work in education. I'm now looking to focus on healthcare. We have a lot of challenges, and I'm certain that you guys can relate to that, a number of challenges in healthcare because of our geographical location. And I really think this is a really good opportunity for us to have a conversation, or to begin a true conversation amongst the territories as it relates to healthcare and how we can collaborate. I think that the visa discussion around individuals being able to come to the U.S. Virgin Islands can really help us with our healthcare tourism, and really help with the healthcare of the Caribbean overall, as well as the yachting industry. So there's so many opportunities where we can collaborate on. But for the most part, I saw things here in the U.S. Virgin Islands that I felt that I needed to help with changing the narrative. And I believe that thus far I've been doing a really good job of doing that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. You really came into it with the attitude of helping to rebuild. You saw a need there for to help with that new direction forward after those devastating storms. That Absolutely. Is very, very admirable. And Ms. Simmons, could you tell us how you came into your career, and what highlights and challenges have you seen that you can share with us?
So I think my entrance sort of started with my family, in that when I was young, my parents were the ones who supported the members of parliament in our area. And I think I just grew into it. And I always tell people that when I was in college, and after coming back from college, my mom said as long as I was going to my PLP meetings, I didn't have to do any domestic chores. So that was a definite catalyst for me to work. But I think in serving with the politicians, it gave me the opportunity to see the our communities, and as we knocked on doors and as we interacted. So I got to see from behind the scenes. And then in 2007, Dr. Brown was the premier of Bermuda, and he asked me to serve as the campaign chair for the election for the PLP. And so I served, and we won that election. And it was just exciting times. And about 2 years later, I was working in international business in Bermuda, and I was made redundant. And so I reached out to Dr. Brown. He said, "Oh, good, you can come and work for the PLP now." So I was actually the executive director of the PLP for up until 2012, when we lost the general election. So I think that was one of the challenges as well, is that when you are working from the scope that I work, and you see that our people are hurting, and they feel that as politicians, and even as a support system, that we're not supporting them, and or we're not hearing them. When we go to the polls, they let us know that you didn't hear us, and so you need us. So I think politics comes, full circle. In Bermuda, it's challenging in the fact that we have needs, but a lot of times we as the front line, we see the needs, and sometimes we don't know how to meet those needs. And we, for me, because Bermuda is such a small island, it gives us the opportunity to reach out and touch our people really easily. but it also means that when they're frustrated, the reach back to us is, it's the same. And so I think one of the exciting things is that right now, I think as the Bermuda government, which we are attached to, they have managed the pandemic really, really well. And it's interesting that this is in the middle of Easter. And you know how last week they were saying Hosanna to Jesus, and then next week they were crucifying. And it's similar in politics because, when you start out helping people and they love you, the minute something happens and you mess up, they're ready to crucify you. And so we have to be constantly in touch. And from where I sit, my responsibility is to make sure that the politicians are out there meeting the needs of our people and staying in touch. And so it's a very exciting role as the chairperson now of the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party to be in the position to encourage our MPs to stay out there. And I did that groundwork, so I know exactly what it looks like. So I know what it means to knock on doors. I know what it means to make sure that people in your communities have access to the assistance that they need. So it's easy for me to sort of know when we have the real deal of going out there and meeting the needs of our people. So, I really enjoy the role that I have as an administrator in politics, not necessarily the frontline politician. Um, and so that's my choice.
Thank you so much. Really interesting analogy there, because it is, on this show, we've actually talked a few times about how our territory's small size, there's a lot of benefits that we can leverage about being small islands. But at the same time, like you're saying, that feedback is so quick to come back to you anytime there is frustrations. And it's really great to hear that you worked into that position from doing the footwork and really getting to know your people and didn't just fall into it. I think that gives just a lot of veracity to your position. Miss Donovan, how did you choose your current career, and what are some highlights or challenges that you can share with us?
I guess my career is sort of a culmination of different aspects of who I wanted to be from a young girl, and understanding what happens in the global community, and choosing a path that I was trying to make a difference. I think I started out wanting to tell, the real story of what was happening. I aspired to be a journalist, to not only tell the stories in terms of what the headline, but what's happening behind the headlines, the who, the how, the what, the when, and the why, and sort of to be like a global citizen like Shaina M, and to be, telling those stories. But early on, I came to understand that most of what's happening in the world is defined by politics, and conversely, politics is defined by what's happening in the global economy. And
Right.
so it's very important to understand, like right now, what is happening politically overseas in terms of, the Russia invasion of Ukraine. It's determining what's happening with the global economy, in the sense that, we are all having to deal with, rising gas prices, rising fuel prices. So understanding the context of, what was then the developing world versus the developed world, poverty versus wealth, the wealth disparities, and those were things I was interested in learning. So I went into international affairs, which is essentially the marriage of, politics and the global economy. and also, telling the stories of what's happening, behind of the front page. And through that, I've essentially worked, in many places, had very varied experiences. I've, had short stints in places like Nigeria and South Africa. I have also worked in New York, in Washington, D.C. I've worked, I spent 4.5 years in Hong Kong, and also
Wow.
did a stint in London. And now I'm back home in the BVI for good. And I'm, working as in the financial services industry, as I said, the marketing, promotion, and brand reputation. And a lot of what I'm dealing with right now, or what we are dealing with, is really defending the reputation of the jurisdiction, and understanding that, we have to comply with all these international standards. We have to ensure that, when the headlines reach in terms of, us being attacked for our economy and for what we have in our financial services industry, and how do we explain that we are making a valuable contribution to the global economy, and we are benefit to the global economy, and not as some of the propaganda that is being put out in the international media. So it's a real challenge in terms of defending the reputation of the jurisdiction, but it's something that is very important because the financial services contributes over 60% of our government revenues. It's about more than 30% of our GDP overall.
Wow.
But it's very important, and so we have to make sure that it's sustainable, and that we also are ensuring that the next generation of Virgin Islanders can benefit from our financial services industry. So I see it as a patriotic duty to work and defend the British Virgin Islands. I am a BV Islander from all respects, and a Virgin Islander, as we say, from all respects. And I think it is important that we understand that we are connected to everything that is happening in the globe, whether it's going to impact us as territories, but how we as territories impact the globe. And we also look at our constitutional relationship. What does that mean, and what does it mean for our future? What does it mean for the next generation?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I was looking at, and when doing some research here, and saw that you had quite a bit of international experience. So it is really great that you bring that back home to represent us so ably. And I read an article you wrote about taxation transparency as well from 2019. And it's interesting because I can see your journalistic side come through in that. It was really comprehensive, well presented. So very interesting to learn.
We often get the pejorative term of use of tax haven. And so we have to explain that we're a tax neutral jurisdiction and what that means. It just means that, we don't add an additional layer of tax, but it doesn't negate you from paying your fair share of tax in the jurisdiction in which you're required to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, dealing with the same thing in Cayman for sure.
Yeah. Well, most of us are in the same industry.
Yeah.
Tourism and financial services. Yeah.
So just to let everyone know, Chris did pop in. But I think there you are. Hey, Chris, give you opportunity to say good night to everybody.
Good night, everyone. Good night to, I'll start with our other host, Emily DeCou. How are you?
Our guest host tonight.
Good night, Madam Senator. How are you? Madam President. Good night, Miss Donovan. How are you?
Good night. I'm fine, thank you.
And good night to my chairperson, my chairwoman, Madam Dawn Simmons.
Good night. Nice to see you, Chris.
Yes, I'm mostly going to be observing tonight, but carry on. You're doing quite well.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
And Emily, thanks again for coming back onto the show, and give us an update on where you're at in reference to this first question here about how you got into your current career and what are some highlights and challenges that you've been experiencing, even since the last time you were on the show.
Right, thank you. And thank you once again, Eden, Shaina, and Chris for inviting me on again. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be on Territories Talk. I take great pride in being a Caribbean woman, and being on this show, it makes my heart sing. So thank you once again for the opportunity. How did I get into politics? Very, very similar to the senator. She observed some injustices after a natural disaster, whereas with me, I witnessed some injustices by a member of government at the time that didn't sit right with me for very plain reasons. But it stirred something within me that I didn't realize was there, in that it was almost like once I had the spark of just speak up and do the right thing, it was the most sort of obvious move was, oh, hey, the next election is about 6 months, stand up and run. What's the worst that can happen? You make your principles known. Hopefully you can inspire some people, and hey, you might win. But overall, it was that one action that it really was a moment of just realizing that wasn't the first it was a action in a series of actions that were not right and were not translating to positive change for the Cayman Islands. And I couldn't sit idly by anymore personally. We speak about wanting change, but till we realize that we are the change that we wish to see, and step up and say it starts with me. If not me, who? If not now, when? And just taking the leap of faith. If you've got a good head on your shoulders and you know the truth in your heart, and that you feel like if you feel compelled that you can contribute, I highly encourage you to make that journey. But whilst I was not elected, I still am working as much as I can within the community through a local grassroots organization that I became part of after the last election, called Amplify Cayman. And we being the members, which include Eden as well, are very committed to trying to educate the community on how to participate in their own democracy, empower them with sort of the vocabulary they need to be empowered and to participate, but also to contribute to the conversations that are necessary. A lot of people I found when I was running, they are frustrated. They feel frustrated. They just aren't able to put it into words and articulate exactly what the reason behind their frustration is. And when you kind of just explain it and get down on their level and break it down that it's not them, you're not frustrated because you're doing the wrong thing. There are systems in place that are not built to support you, and that's not justice, that's not equity, that's not the Cayman Islands I boast to to friends and family in other countries. It doesn't speak to the Cayman kind that we are actually very much truly known for. I mean, when you meet Caymanians, we're a very kind, hospitable people. We take great pride in our heritage and our culture and our traditions, and we're seeing it slip very quickly away from beneath us, literally, metaphorically. But I do what I do with Amplify, and any other way I can contribute within the community. Like I said earlier, I became a member of my firm's ESG committee recently because I advocated, frankly, for the financial services industry. I said, this is something that can be done right. It makes the world go round, and it needs to be done the right way, because our actions here definitely have ripple effects globally. in many ways that we're seeing, and which we know about. And I strongly believe that if you know better, you should do better. And when it comes to the environment and society, we've got, for all intents and purposes, a very healthy economy. If you look at it from a numbers perspective, perhaps, but if you look at the state of the environment that's being exploited, and if you just talk to people and ask how they feel, it's not a healthy community overall. And that's not good. That's not the first world country that we market ourselves as on the international stage, which, there's no reason that we shouldn't be that. And I believe good leadership is all that is needed to really bring that home. And in any way that I can contribute to that, I try to. So some highlights, I guess, thus far, I would say all of the projects that I've helped contribute to with Amplify have just, like I said, made my heart sing. Seeing people's faces light up when you break down a framework for them that helps them put into words that you should take care of the next generation to come, and empowering people really is what it boils down to. And on the flip side, what we also try to do, Amplify, is empower policymakers, that their community does support them making very hard decisions as leaders to sustainable methods rather than the sort of exploitative industries that have become the status quo. And then on the flip side of that brings its own challenges, because it is what everybody's become used to and is what our lives are dependent on massively. Until we move away from fossil fuels, we divest more, we won't see the changes that are necessary, and we're going to be paying a much bigger price down the road if we don't get it right now. So a major challenge is finding the balance in taking care of yourself when you take on a position like that within your community, because as beautiful as nature is and as healing as it is exceptionally heartbreaking and devastating to drive by a plot of land that was a forest last week and is now completely cleared. And, the parrots that you used to hear, you don't hear them anymore. The crabs that, used to cross the road a lot, you don't see them that much anymore. And you go fishing and you can't see fish. Why? Because there's no mangroves for them to keep their nurseries and have their babies in, right? And it's just ripple effects that take away from our culture as an island community when the marine environment gets impacted by the development, for example. I mean, I could keep going on and on, but what I hope to contribute to these talks is to bring forth equitable solutions that work for all of the Caribbean islands, but in whatever way that we can unify as UKOTs, to leverage what we can to hopefully help our non-UKOT island neighbors. It's an honor to do that.
Thank you so much, Emily. And you really you lit a new fire when you ran for politics, and it was a very difficult constituency you were in, and you really started a whole new conversation and really showed a whole new direction. So your work has been really amazing, and the work that you continue to do in advocacy is it's incredible. I learned so much from you all the time. So
thank you.
Yes, thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much.
And now we are going to give a short thanks here to our media partners.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you to all our media partners again. Big shout out to Radio Turks and Caicos. We're actually on there as a replay. So for those that might be tuning in tonight, it's not going to be live, but it will come back on Mondays at 7 p.m. on Radio Turks and Caicos. We're also heard here in the Virgin Islands on CBN Radio 90.9, in Saba, on PJFE, Saba Radio, Montserrat, ZJB Radio, Montserrat, Channel 82 in Bermuda. We thank you again for coming on board. And our friends at Cayman Marl Road Facebook page show. Huge thanks to you guys as well. We are working now again for our viewers in Anguilla. I think that's the last British OT that we were planning to. But again, any viewers from any country, if you guys can connect us to any media partner, we are more than interested in getting the word out. And for our viewers in St. Thomas, we received the message from Senator Frett-Gregory about expanding our map of crests, and I think that is something that we would more than willing to do, because we've had guests on from other overseas territories here in the Caribbean, because again, all of us are one family. So we're gonna make sure that everyone is represented at the end of the day. All right. So Chris, I'm not Chris. Eden, I'll take the next question and I'll kind of merge the two together.
Okay.
To ask our ladies about which women or woman inspired you most in terms of taking up the mantle of leadership, and also speak about your mentors or how you view the importance of mentorship in terms of leadership development. So we'll start with Elise. You're peeping at me, so I'm gonna start with you. So Elise, who were the women that inspired you? Elise is my god sister, by the way, so I know her very well, so she's gonna answer. Are you on mute?
I think the women that inspired me the most would be the ones that have been front and center, for most of my life. And particularly when I look back at all that my mother was doing at my age, I have to drape her with, Superwoman and Wonder Woman capes, because not only was she a principal, she was a teacher, she was a church leader, she baked every weekend. She crocheted tablecloths. She made bedspreads. She made clothes. And, if the house needed painting, she would paint it. If the floor needed tiling, she would tile it. So, I mean, that was the example of, leadership and that I saw, front and center. And when I think of all that she did, at my age and even younger, I really do have to say she was, a super woman, because I'm not, doing 1/10 of what she was doing, and sometimes I'm often exhausted. I think my sisters have probably inherited some of those qualities, but I'm not there. In terms of, I think just our women in our community have also, been around the ones who've seen like these women on this esteemed panel see what needs to be done, and they get about doing it. And it's just an innate quality that I think that women identify. Not just as mothers, but to take care of business. I think there's something that motivates you to take care of business and to get things done. So you see something wrong in your community and you want to make a difference. So you want to make sure that something happens. And I think that's an innate quality that some women have. As far as mentors is concerned, I think it's important to have people in your corner, people who are going to always be accessible, both personally and professionally, and people who are going to be invested in you becoming the best version of yourself. Throughout my career, I think I've had those persons, and it has not been gender defined, in many respects. I think maybe subconsciously I identified that you need to have a man in your corner. So most of my mentors in my professional career happen to be men, and it has happened organically. I remember, as a young girl, fresh out of high school, I was actually having, just happened to be having lunch yesterday with one of those guys. I was adopted by the three, O'Neill brothers as their little mentee. That was Emerson, Everett, and David. So and David, and I was having lunch with Everett and Emerson's daughter yesterday, and I was telling her that, your father, wrote me my reference letters when I was applying to university, and he said to me, "I'm not going to show you what I'm writing, but because if I show you what I'm writing, it's going to go to your head." But essentially, I said, you can walk on water. And, I was accepted to Columbia University. And I think over the years, it has just happened, as I said, organically. I think there have been people in my corner, and most of them have been men. But that's not to negate the fact that that I think sometimes I think there's a lot of mansplaining, or you're not heard or you're not seen unless you do bring a man in the room. And so it's not to negate that experience at all. But I think for me, it's important to have people, regardless of their gender, in your corner, and who are going to be invested in you becoming your best version professionally or personally, and that has happened to me over the career. And I really do feel that regardless, you have to have people who are going to provide sound guidance, sound advice, and sometimes help you steer you in a certain course or a certain direction.
Not surprised by that answer at all. So, Senator Donna, how would you respond to that? Who inspired you to take up the mantle of leadership? I think we heard you touch on it a bit when you introduced yourself, and also talk about mentorship as part of your career success.
Where she began, rather. My mother, also, I would say that she was my inspiration in being a leader. She did so much with very little. As I was growing up as a young woman or a young girl here in the Virgin Islands, she just made things happen. She was a mere custodial worker, and I can say that I never want for anything. The expectations were high, and I had to meet the expectations. The opportunities that I had, she didn't have. So she made sure that I did the right thing and I stayed on the right path. And she was a stickler for perfection, if you will. And to this day, she's still a stickler for perfection. But I'll say that as it relates to my political, my politics, if you will, or my career in politics, there were two women here in the Virgin Islands who served in politics a very long time ago, and people still talk about them. They actually served as the president of the legislature. There were two women presidents of the legislature before myself, Lorraine L. Berry and Ruby M. Rouse. And here in the Virgin Islands, we're hearing about breaking glass ceilings now, but I have to say that these women have been breaking glass ceilings since the 70s, the 80s, and forward. So they were my inspiration as it relates to politics. So when I go about my business in politics, I subconsciously, I think, emulate them from time to time. I make sure that the work that I do, that I'm very deliberate in my work because of the work that I actually followed them as a young girl when I was in high school, and when I went off to college, and when I came back from college, I had the opportunity to work in the legislature. So I had the opportunity to actually work under one of those women as I served as a accountant in the business office in the legislature here in St. Thomas. So they've really been an inspiration to me, and I have to say that I consider them my mentor when it comes to politics. But I have to say this. So we made reference to women, but I have to say that my dad is the person that really forged the way for me to be a leader. He was a stickler for doing the right thing, for perfection. When I was a young girl, I think I was in like the 7th grade, we had our own shop where every afternoon you had to be in the shop for a certain time. We sold, do you guys know what specials are, right? That icy thing where you mix it with Kool-Aid, you put it in the freezer, that kind of thing. So we served special and all those little candies, and we had to count our money, make sure that, whatever we sold, we were right on target with, what the pan had in it at the end of the day. And then during the summertime, we definitely had to, what we did is we those funds that we collected throughout the year, we would buy our school uniform. So, leadership for me is, I just look at it as a complete package as it relates to the relationship that I've had with my mother, the women in politics, my dad. And then, as Elise noted, I also have worked in the government of the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, for 30 plus years. And interestingly enough, all of my supervisors, if you will, were men, and they served as great mentors to me. My background is finance, and I worked in the financial world in the government for a long time, and those men really shepherded me through the process. They were people that I could lean on. They provided support. They lifted me up when I needed to be lifted up. So, there's a lot of credit to go around for leadership. But what I will tell you is I've been very deliberate about how I lead. I reach back and harken back to all of my experiences, and I work very hard not to make the same mistakes as a leader. So my mentorship is, I would say, deep and wide, from my mother to my dad to the men in the community and to the women who've been in the political field here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I consider myself very blessed to have walked that path from the late 60s to now in the 21st century, if you will. So I can, like I said, I am blessed to have had the opportunity to have had great mentors and to have had a mother and a dad who didn't have a whole lot, but were very supportive and had high expectations for their children.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I think that's interesting in terms of us, I guess, as a Caribbean people. We come from humble beginnings, but they still always expect excellence.
Yes.
There's never a pass given to say, well, because of our beginnings that, we're given a pass to do less than our best. So, I expect that is something I think is missing today, really, in terms of how we're bringing up that next generation and continuing to pass that bar of excellence along, as it were. Madam Simmons, Dawn, would you like to share?
Sure.
Who inspired you?
Yeah. I'm going to start off by saying that when it comes to mentorship, for me, one thing that I live by is that I think the biggest compliment that I can pay to myself is to train or mentor someone to replace me. So I'm never intimidated, or I never not share information with younger people with the fear that they will take the position that I have, because I believe that there will always come a time when it's time for us to step off the stage, and I would rather have someone trained and knowledgeable rather than move off the scene, and a lot of the hard work that we've done falls to naught because we haven't trained anyone. And I'm a branch chair as well in Bermuda, and I tell my branch in the last election, I will remain as the branch chair only if a young person is willing to be my deputy, so that I can train them, so that when the next election comes, I can step off and feel confident that um, they've had some hands-on training when it comes. And I think a lot of my attitude started from when I was a young woman coming back from college. And, I interacted with women like Aurelia, Miss Aurelia Birch, Ann Rea, Bernal Henry, Leonie Ricketts. These were the women who were in administration in the PLP, and they welcomed me with open arms. And I think my upbringing, where I had respect for seniors, so I never felt like they were senior women and I should push them aside. I always looked at what can I learn from them, and how can I improve on what they're doing when my time comes. And my mom had a lot of influence, and the two women I'm going to talk about now, with in supporting their husbands, um, influenced me. And my mom, you know, she just inspired me to be the best that I could be. And she didn't feel that any task or any support that she could give to her family, um, you know, for both of them. I was a teenager, still hanging out with my mom and dad because I just enjoyed, their company and what I learned from them. My father was an electrician, and in order for back in those days, not many white people would be seen to support, the Progressive Labor Party. So in his profession, he could go into their houses, if they wanted to support us and didn't want people to know. And so that had a big impact on my life as a person who works in administration. Sometimes you have to be creative in the ways that you provide support. And so, my mom was there, and my dad, um, were there to show the way. They supported us everywhere. They were the PTA parents. They were the parents that came and picked you up if you were stuck, whatever you needed. And then there was another lady, and her name was Mrs. Linda Cox, and she was the wife of my area MP, the late C. Eugene Cox, and she was the secretary of our branch. And what I learned from her and the other ladies that I mentioned earlier was that record keeping, being committed, um, also your word is your bond. Um, and I think sometimes we forget that what we're doing now will one day be history. And who can look back and learn and read from what we did back in the day? And Miss Cox, not only was she Mr. Cox's wife, but she was the secretary of our branch, and the record keeping, her minutes, and the pride that she felt in doing that job. It it may seem small, but it impacted me as a young woman that um, whenever I am doing anything, you have to be committed, you have to be reliable, you have to have pride in whatever tasks you do, um, whether they seem big or small. And so now that I am in the leadership role and the mentoring of young women, um, I want to pass on to the next generation the lessons that I learned. And being in women, a lot of times, most people aspire to be the politician. And one of the things that I have learned is whatever role you have, you should do it with pride. So if you're not going to be the politician, um, and you're going to be the admin or the support people, uh, do it to the best of your ability. And I feel sometimes that I'm on call just as much as the politicians, because they're calling on me to say, "Hey, my van's not working. This is not working. Can you find this for me?" I think you're sitting at home enjoying your evening. You look at your phone for a minute and you wish you hadn't, because it's somebody asking you to do a task. And so, and then of course, when people in your community know that you are the support system, when they need help, they they reach out to you if they cannot reach the politician in the area. So you become the conduit between your community and and your politician. And I would encourage any young women, young people in general, coming along, don't feel less than because you are not the elected official. We all have our role to play, and I learned that from young, from watching the politicians, and take whatever opportunities come. Um, and what I would like to see shared across the region is actually training opportunities um, in administration, as well as the opportunity to learn how other jurisdictions. This is really interesting, listening to the other panelists, and I think that there is so much that we can learn from each other, and it would be nice, if we could have some mentoring opportunities, because there may be women who are younger than what I am who can start in administration and aspire to be, a politician or a senator. And in Bermuda, senators are appointed by the leaders of the parties, and then we have some independent senators. But this is really eye opening, and I think some of the opportunities that I've had to interact. One thing I did a training course for aspiring politicians, and I met women from around the world, and it really opened my eyes to the fact that stuff that I thought was big, when you meet women who put their life on the line to be politicians, or to aspire to be politicians, and who have the systems that are really in place to push them down and prevent them. It really opened my eyes to, maybe having to fight with the guys in the back room may not be as bad when you see these women whose, the laws of their lands and that type of stuff prevents them from being being able to move freely in leadership. It may be tough for us to get there, but a lot of times we can move freely in our areas. And for young women coming up, I look forward to the day when it took the PLP 55 years to have a female chairperson. But now these young women coming up, I want to pave the way and mentor them and train them. Part of my role in my job in IB was trainer. And so whenever I look at young people coming around, what can I teach them? How can I teach them? And I have experience on both sides, and working in your community, it really opens your eyes to bringing others along, whatever gender they are, whatever age they are, to be able to, to move freely and to operate in a space that accepts them for who they are, and looking forward to having more um, training and development opportunities. That's something that we're working on as a party, creating a training and development aspect for anyone coming along, so that you don't have to stumble into the House of Assembly before you learn what a bill is, and how to be an advocate. And so that way they're able to give better service if they're trained, rather than sort of expected to walk in and know what to do without having seen some of the aspects before.
Awesome. That is great. All right, Emily. You've had this question before, but I want to give you a bonus question tonight because I was talking to Chris about it. So recently, I think it was last week, it was as recent as last week, that we had the first Black woman appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Look at her face.
Katanji Brown Jackson. Yes. Love it.
What are your thoughts on that? How do you think has that inspired you and other women in terms of leadership? Because you saw the firing squad she had to endure to get over that hurdle, but we were all rooting for her and very happy to hear the end result at the end. What's your thoughts?
I find it hard to put into words how much pride I felt seeing that, to know how many challenges she overcame, and how she so beautifully, humbly admitted that whilst she didn't quite strike the work-life balance with motherhood in her profession, she's hoping, she wants to do right going forward. And I take my hat off to her, and I watched when the other two Supreme Court justices were being interviewed, and to say it was a completely different experience, it's not hard to see why, for both reasons, all three reasons, I think, whether it be religious, racial, we've got a lot of work to do, and seeing that is just, it sort of reaffirms that the work you're doing is not sort of in vain. It helps you realize that it's hard work, but every little step is another step in the right direction. And when we look back on this in history, it's hopefully gonna, she's hopefully set the bar to normalize, electing people of color to just represent the diverse globe that we all live on, and bring the different perspectives that we all do, and use that for good. It was a beautiful moment for sure. It's up there with watching Kamala Harris, becoming the first Black woman vice president. That's phenomenal, just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Awesome. Shaina, I think for me the thing that stands out is that any Black person, any Black woman has to be, triply qualified, to enter. And I'm going to add another dimension, and then I'm going to mute myself. And but not only that, they have to be triply qualified, but they have to bring their white man in the room. That's the topic of a book that's in my head. Bring your white man in the room.
I like that.
Any other comments from our other panelists as it relates to the appointment?
I think Emily said it well, that it was an experience for all of us as women to see such history being made. But equally important, it also says to our Black and brown girls that are growing up today that the possibilities for them are endless, and the world is really changing.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's very hard to really say or to talk about it, and to talk about where we were and where we came from and where we are now. It's amazing. It's
Very
amazing
bittersweet.
and very encouraging. It's encouraging, and I think it's so important for us as women to continue to provide mentorship, scholarship, and fellowship to young women, but not only young women. We have women of our age and our time who we still should be providing mentorship and support to. A lot of women, based on our experiences, we are not comfortable with stepping out in our community. And I think women like myself and all of the other women on this panel tonight, including you, Shaina, I think it's important for us to provide safe spaces for women in our community, and to let them know that it's okay. And it's okay to have challenges, and it's okay to share with women that you trust, or people that you trust overall. As an elected leader here in the Virgin Islands, I step out every day with my big what as a woman, but it doesn't say that I don't have my challenges when I get home. So you just have, the safe space is important, and I'm certain that Katanji, she has a safe space at home and with her sisters, and it's important for us to ensure that we let our sisters know in our Caribbean islands that there is a safe space, and we all need to get comfortable to get uncomfortable to become comfortable as we work together. I just think that is just so important.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you mentioned that, because that was one of the reasons, or I should say the motivation behind us doing this series of Women in Leadership, to showcase, the tenacity, the dynamic women that we have, whether it's in politics. It actually started off as a political focus, but, leadership is leadership. So whether it's in church, it's in nonprofit organization, it's in public service, it's in politics, leadership is leadership. And we really wanted to have this show to be that inspiration for our peers, as well as the next generation coming, to understand that the world is your oyster, And again, as we were saying before the show, the reward for good work is more work, but that's okay. Because then it really is about, at least for me, the fulfillment of a lot of it is about seeing things become better. I often tell persons, it's about leaving things better than I met it. So whatever I'm involved in, whether it's MPO or when I worked in the civil service, you're always trying to see how you can improve. And I think it was Miss Donna who mentioned that, when she got involved in the party, she was learning from those women that were there senior to her, so that when her turn came to be a leader in that organization, because she already saw herself there. And that's also a key thing that you said that really stood out for me tonight, is we have to have that vision for ourselves to be leaders, and not just you have that process, as it were. So there's a point where you have to follow and you have to learn, you hone your leadership skills, and then when it's your turn to come, you lead with excellence and keep it going. So Ms. Simmons, you came from a slightly different era. How did that nomination impress upon you?
For me, it was very interesting to see that the strength and the resilience that she showed in all the arrows and darts that were thrown at her. And I think it pulled women across generations, across, just from around the world. Like, I think the whole world was looking, and us as women, like, we just felt so proud that she was just able to with all that she had accomplished, and to have to almost defend it with people who had done so little in comparison. But it was also exciting to see the support that she received. But talking to other young women, talking to younger women who watched it, and to see their reaction, and it's just so inspiring for the younger generation to see that you can put in the hard work, you can do whatever, and people can try and pull you down, but you still rise. Yeah. It doesn't matter. And so it shows that preparation is important as well, because you don't want to fall apart when you're being picked at. And it was just really, really exciting. The Bermuda is so close to the U.S. So for us, it's sort of like a 2-hour plane ride. Yeah. And so it felt closeness in spirit as well. And it reminded me of other women who, back in their day, sort of had to face similar fiery sports, and they stood. And so because they stood, she could stand. And I'm sure she saw that as she was sitting there, like, I'm here today because somebody else paved the way for me. Yeah, and I'm paving the way for the next generation. So more little, girls who look like me are inspired to stand strong and rise to the rise to the top. It was just really, really, it was awesome. Very awesome.
Shaina, I wanted to interject and just say, I think it's important for us to send a message to young women and young men that a position is not defined by, which gender is in it. And I think that's important because it's what do you aspire? You can aspire to be, a Supreme Court judge. Right here, we have the Virgin Islander who has served for many years as the Chief Justice, Justice Janice Pereira. So we've had that example of, seeing somebody from the Virgin Islands be head of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, which is, in our sense, equivalent to, the Supreme Court in the United States. So it's like, what do you aspire to? A position. It doesn't matter who is there. You can aspire to any position as a young girl, as a young man. You can aspire to that position, and I don't think that you just see, it opens doors because a woman is in it. Because it's you can be the person that breaks that glass ceiling, whether or not a woman is there leading the example or not. And I think it's important for us to know that anything is possible, regardless of where you come from, where you start. And as one of our panelists said before, put in the work and making sure you get the qualifications, and knowing that you're going to have to work twice as hard, and that you're going to have to get twice the qualifications that any person of the other gender, or I would say of another race, may have to attain. So
and I guess what you're speaking to is the biases now that exist around certain roles, as it were. Senator, you were about to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
I was agreeing with you. I was actually agreeing with you about breaking the bias.
Yeah.
And coming from Caribbean countries, I know that our communities are Black communities, if you will. We still, as women, find that we have to break the bias. I myself, I'll give you an example that our legislature of the Virgin Islands has been around for over 70 plus years, and I am only the third woman to serve as president. The last time a woman served as president of the legislature in the Virgin Islands was 20 plus years ago. So that's just an example of the challenges and the fact that we actually have to push harder and work harder. And there's also something I want to share this evening. So, and I'm sure that the women on this panel, they also may have experienced it. But when we have our deliberations as elected leaders, those of you who are in politics, there's this expectation that we should be guarded with our, with our position, guarded with how the information comes out, guarded with how we share it. And whereas when men in the same chamber, they express themselves, the criticism is not there. But as a woman, the expectation is that you should act like a woman. You should, and I don't know what that means as a politician, if you will, someone that serves in the community. If I'm passionate about an issue, I should be able to express myself. I should be able to be a bulldog, if you will, for that issue or on that issue. And there are a lot of times that while you're bulldog for the issues, you find that there is criticism because of the positions that you take. And that's only because you're a woman in the society. So those are some things that we really have to break, those biases as women in our Caribbean communities, as well as the contiguous. It's just a global issue overall.
Yeah, and in the conversations I had for last month with International Women's Day, you realize that the more we accomplish or the progress that we made, when you look at the indicators again around economic empowerment for women, political representation, health issues, we're still lagging behind, and there are some serious gaps that I think have been accepted, as it were. So it's okay for a woman to be paid less. Because that's how it's always been. That's almost as if that's the norm, rather than, then that's not equity and that's not equality in your societies. And as a result, I likened it when I was speaking to someone or in an article I wrote, it's as if you have 12 cylinders and you're only running on 6 because half of your cylinders are not where they're supposed to be. And that's what gender equality and equity is about. Your society needs to realize its fullest potential by the people that are in there, regardless of gender or race or any other demographic that we can come up with, that we make, we have these expectations. Wherever they came from, a lot of it is historical because, we are a conservative society and we belong in the house. So some of us are being very rebellious right now in the eyes of some. So it's very key. Well, ladies, this has been a great conversation. We have to start to wrap up. So I'm going to give you closing words, I guess, would be to, inspire our viewers and different audiences to come, especially our younger ones that, they have next. And it's for them, again, to see where their place is in this global world that we find ourselves in. And how they start to prepare themselves, as it were, for leadership. Because oftentimes, again, it's not just about political leadership, but wherever you find yourself, to be the leader, be the change that you wish to see. So, Senator, I'll start with you.
Well, again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening, and I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I'll just close by saying that as women, it's important for us to empower other women, empower young women, and we should continue to focus on mentorship, as I said earlier, educating our young people, as well as other women in our community. Is just so important for us to ensure that, leaders are, we pull up our leaders when it's necessary. We work with our leaders when it's necessary. And more importantly, I think it's so important for us to ensure that we are able to collaborate. A lot of times as women in our society, we don't really collaborate. We spend a lot of time competing, and it's just so much better when you really work with each other. The possibilities are really endless when you get together and really work on a project and see it come to fruition. And again, working with young people is equally important because, again, as we've said all this evening, what's important is we have to prepare those that'll come after us, and we also have to put in the sweat equity and have the grit, so those that come after us can see the work that we did, and it would inspire them to really be great leaders in their respective communities. Again, I want to thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to doing this again.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for being here. Mrs. Simmons?
I also want to thank you for the opportunity. This has been a really great opportunity to interact with other women, in the Caribbean. And I just want to inspire young women and even our peers to know your worth. And sometimes we have to fight for people to see that you bring value to the table, and for the next generation, look for opportunities. Don't always wait for somebody to reach out to you or to give you an opportunity. I have this young woman now, and she just keeps coming. I want to help. I want to do something. I want to. And those are the type of people. I think one of the things that I took for granted was feeling that my work that I done in the party would speak for me. And I learned the hard way that sometimes you have to show people your worth. And there are a lot of young women around who have so much to bring to the table. And as I work, because I'm one of the older members of my executive, and I'm being surrounded by younger women, and it's just so inspiring to see their willingness to work and what they're bringing, the different gifts and talents that they're bringing to the table. Sometimes we have to pull it out of them as well. And so I'm just grateful for this opportunity. As our territories have differed, so have our experiences, and I've learned so much tonight from being a part of this panel, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you for accepting. Miss Emily, what are your closing words of inspiration?
Well, I want to say thank you as well for having me on again. This show has been the highlight of my week thus far, and which it doesn't take much, but so thank you. And I want to just say, similarly to Ms. Dawn, if you feel like you have it within you as a young person, or just anybody who has just that spark of feeling like things are not the way they should be, and you feel like you have it within you to change that for the better, do it. There is no time like the present. As I said earlier, if not me, who? If not now, when? I'm so inspired by the young people who stand up in Cayman, but also globally. We've got many youth-led action groups here who are literally just protesting for their lives and their futures. And it's an honor to be able to work alongside them. And I'm so inspired by them. And even if I can inspire just one of them, I'm honored. And through working alongside of them, whether it be in a protest outside of the governor's house, these children youth are giving up their education, their social lives, their family times, their commitments, their studies to protest for climate action. And a lot of young people have come up and said to me, the state of the world has inspired them to be the change they wish to see. And you almost wish it weren't that way, but on the flip side, it's sort of it is how it is. And if these young people don't stand up, no one will, and nothing will ever change. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And hopefully we see more diversity generationally, gender-wise, when it comes to elected officials, but also just the people in our communities who have the power within them to make decisions that affect their neighbors and future generations. We each have a moral generational obligation to take care of the people who are not even born yet, or animals who need a chance to continue to evolve and contribute to the ecosystems that we all literally rely on to survive. It's within us. It's I'll go so far as to say it's what we're put on this planet to do. But if you've got breath in your body, I think that you should use it to do good. And if you feel like there's a gap in some way that you can fill positively, go for it. I couldn't be more proud of you, and I don't even know you, right? If you just say, I recognize that there is an injustice and I want to right it. I'm inspired by people like AOC, who at 28 stood up and said, I want my community to be properly represented. Malala Yousafzai, who was shot by the Taliban and who is now committed to bringing education for women and girls in the Middle East, I follow her on her fund project on Facebook, and every day I'm moved to tears just about by the different projects that they do and the work that she does globally and then that her team does. But locally, beyond the youth, I'm inspired by the good women in politics. I'll call out one of my closest confidants is Kathy Wilkes from West Bay, my native West Bay in Cayman, who was elected last year and who provides me with so much inspiration. And she's been an exceptional mentor in her abilities since she's been elected, inspiring me, encouraging me to continue to go. And on days when we run into each other at the bank, it's like, how are you? I'm good. I'm sad, but I'm good. It's like, because the way of the world, it's hard work, but it has to be done, because if it's not done, think of the alternative. And the alternative is that injustices continue, people continue to suffer, and there's very, very little that prevented you from being in that situation potentially as a vulnerable person within your control, right? There's nothing to say that any one of us could have been born into a very hard situation, perhaps, that we weren't, beyond where we were born and who we were born from and in what time, right? So we have to recognize our blessings as they are and where we are at in history and what we can rely on to bring justice. We have laws. Laws are great if they're enforced, and if people have the confidence to hold their fellow man and their neighbor accountable. You can't call the police on everybody who drops a piece of litter, but you can say, "Oi, bobo, clean it up, man." Like, come on, take some pride in your country and whatever. But
Okay.
yeah, hopefully if we can inspire just a few young people to stand up, young women, women hold up half the sky, and deserve representation on all levels.
Yeah. Awesome. So you keep breaking the biases and doing your thing.
I will do my best.
Right. Miss Donovan.
What can I say? There's not much more to add, only that, the good book says that it's a good man or woman leaves an inheritance to his children and his children's children, to her children and to her children's children. And I think we have to ask ourselves the question, what Erin was talking about and what the senator was talking about in terms of what are we leaving, what inheritance are we leaving to our children, what world are we leaving, what community are we leaving, what messages are we leaving to our children. When I look at the young women in our community, people like my niece Via, who are doing phenomenal things and are inspirational in themselves and are bold. And I'm reminded of how I was as a young person. and I had a lot of fire in me. But somewhere along the line, I felt like, there were buckets of ice thrown on that. And so that fire is somewhat diminished. So I would want us to continue to inspire the young people to continue to have the fire, to change what they don't like around them. Because, we had, 20 years ago, I was telling my niece, I was at, protests in New York for Abner Louima and Amadou Diallo, who were dealing with, police brutality and police abuse. And it's really sad that, 20 years later, my nieces have to deal with that. The young generation has to deal with the same sort of issues that we were dealing with. And when we look at the environmental issues, what environment are we leaving? What globe are we leaving? Are we going to change the climate? Are we going to give them a new inheritance? So what are we leaving for our children and their children? What future are we leaving for them? And how can we inspire them? And something I want to say is that they're not going to tolerate. I look at the young women, and you look at the statistics, and those statistics that Shaina, you called out, they're changing for the young women, because they're the ones that are predominantly in the universities, predominantly, at the head of the companies. It's young people, and particularly young women. And in this community, and I know we are leaving our young men behind, and we can't leave them behind. So we have to collectively take both our young men and our young women forward, and really be mindful of what inheritance we are leaving to our children and our children's children.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you to all our panelists tonight and our guests. Chris, you had some parting words while I get the media sponsors up. Go right ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Go right ahead.
Yes. I just want. I'm in tuning in all night. I just wanted to thank each and every one of you. Special shout out to Senator Frett-Gregory. My family actually lives in VI, both VIs, I should say, up in Tutu. So you are our president of the Senate.
Yes, I love that.
And Ms. Donovan, my mom, is, as they say back home, what going on, Miss Son? My mom is from Tortola. So thank you for what you do for Tortola. Madam Dawn, what Madam Dawn is very humble. What she didn't say is that she has mentored many of my generation of MPs that have come into the party over the last 10 years. And as she said, she loves to do the work in the background. And many nights, days and nights, she would be at the party headquarters when everybody else is going about the merry ways, making sure that the background workers are doing what's got to be done. So much so that the last election that we held in 2020, we won the largest majority that our party has, or any party has ever seen in this country, where we won 30 out of 36 seats. And that's all due to Madam Dawn marshalling the background workers. So I just want to tell her thank you. And Emily, once again, Emily is somebody that whenever a post goes up on our Facebook page, Territory's Facebook page, one of the first persons to like and share would be Emily. So she is part of the background family, and we're looking for a new host, not new host, but additional hosts to rotate Emily. So when you have time,
Yes, that operative word, when.
Yes, when. So I just want to thank each and every one of you, because as the saying goes, is that women have claimed the place, and us men as such as Eden and I, we have to just continue to just step aside like tonight and just let you all, do what you got to do because we learn from you. So I just want to thank you and thank you to all those who tuned in, those in Bermuda who were sending WhatsApps and so on, and thanks to all our media partners. Oh, one other thing, Madam President, if you could thank the Congresswoman Plaskett for what's being done for the other islands to now come to USVI visa free, that's a great move. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I know you are part of it, so I want to thank you as well.
Absolutely. Her and I work very closely together, so I will be very happy to pass the information on. We just need to make sure that we get the folks in the Senate to give the nod, and then we're well on our way. It's a good thing for the Caribbean islands, all of us.
Yeah. Yes, we need more interregional travel. Shaina, you're on mute.
Hey, Chris, would you like to acknowledge our media partners and then close off?
Yes, and as importantly as our guests and our viewers, without our media partners, the challenge will be that much harder. So we want to thank ZJB Radio in Montserrat, PJFE in Saba, CBM, which broadcasts in both the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, CMR in Cayman Islands, Channel 82, Lemon Woods in Bermuda, and Radio Turks and Caicos in Turks and Caicos. And we should be having someone else coming online sometime very soon. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, so from those of us here at Territories Talk, on behalf of my co-hosts, Eden and Chris, we'd like to encourage everyone to tune in. At our next episode, we'll be talking about food security, I believe it is. And we're currently assembling our guests, so you will see the poster come out shortly as it relates to who those panelists will be for another exciting conversation. Because again, as Elise alluded to tonight, we are connected to a global village. So if there's war in Ukraine that produces wheat, then we're going to have a problem getting Johnny cakes. Right, Senator?
Yes.
So we might have to go back to growing guinea corn up in Anguilla, Chris. I thought about that this week, I was like, listen, we're going to go back to our roots if flour becomes a shortage this year because of this war,
Anguilla is prime real estate now, cuz be careful.
Yeah,
be careful.
yeah. No, we're going to go back to growing some guinea corn. Don't worry. But again, that's going to be, another important conversation that we need to have as Caribbean countries and understanding the vulnerability, as it were, when it comes to food and our access to it and food supply, because we're not producing adequate supplies to sustain ourselves. So it is something that we want to kick that off as a topic that we're going to probably have several conversations about, actually, as it relates to the different aspects of how, we get that going. And there's been a lot of conversations about it, but what we want to move now from talk shop to actual implementation and get to that place. So, in previous shows, we talked about, one country produce the sheep, another one will do the pigs, another with the chicken, and I think we'll be able to sustain ourselves comfortably. So,
yeah, Daphne Ewing Chow will be on with us on April 27th, and that's been the whole focus as a journalist is food security and the interconnectedness of food and culture. And I saw we had a viewer from Puerto Rico tonight, and they're doing amazing things over there, actually with women's led cooperatives that are doing breadfruit flour and trying to create that staple in the Caribbean. And that has been amazingly successful. I learned about that in Caribbean Tree Planting Week last year. So a lot of really interesting things going on with food security in the Caribbean region.
Okay. So until next time, our next show will be on the 27th of April. So save the date. We will be back here, and you can always follow us. Again, let me pull up our banners real quick. Remember to like our Facebook page, Territories Talk, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. So any information we have when we schedule our lives, persons who may have tuned in late or on the radio, You can also go to Facebook or YouTube and watch any of our shows that we've done in the past. So we encourage you to also do that. So until next time, let us continue to inform and unite our OT family. Good evening.
All right. Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.